Welcome back to Bit by Bit. Today I speak with Brian Harrington. We talk about earning, spending, and saving Bitcoin. I know for a lot of people the idea of spending Bitcoin is a little bit crazy. And to be honest, I think for most people, especially if they've just started to save some Bitcoin, or if they've got a very small proportion of their portfolio allocated to Bitcoin, it probably is a little bit crazy. But for people who are a bit further down the rabbit hole and want to push this circular economy forward, I think it's something that we should really consider. It's something that I was always going to do for my website and for my art, setting up a BTC Pay server. But after chatting with Brian, I am spurred on more than ever to get this done. We also talk about the best ways to save and store your Bitcoin, as well as the best ways to buy your Bitcoin. Brian is very much of the opinion that you should have separate buckets. You can have some that acts as cash and some to buy from exchange. I also share this opinion. I've said many times on the podcast, if you're trying to buy Bitcoin and you don't want KYC, I would suggest that you use Bisq or HODL HODL. There are other services available as well. If you want to buy some Bitcoin on an exchange, I can only really suggest one company. They currently sponsor the podcast, and they are absolutely fantastic. They are CoinFloor UK. The link will be in the show notes, and I recently interviewed their CEO, Obi. For anyone who hasn't already checked that one out, go and have a listen, and I'm sure you will feel comfortable and confident when you buy with CoinFloor. Thanks very much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the show. Brian, thank you so much for coming back on again. To any of the listeners, I'm a complete idiot, and we actually recorded a week or two ago. It was a great episode, but I had not set up my audio equipment properly, wasted Brian's time, and he's been very good about it. So back on for the second time to Bit by Bit is Brian Harrington. Can you introduce yourself, please?
For sure. What's up? And no, last time was helpful. Just any conversation where you can just talk it out live is always helpful. So it was not a waste of time. It clarified a lot of things in my head about, what we'll go over today. So yeah, my name is Brian Harrington. I'm a Bitcoiner from California. I live in Orange County, California. I'm a part of the Orange County Bitcoin Network, good crew of Bitcoiners that meet up here. And I've done a lot of stuff in my life, politics, marketing, just Bitcoin, and like all of it has kind of like revolved around just this idea of freedom. And this idea of freedom is something that's been just growing in my head as time goes on. And just everything that's happening in the world right now has kind of like forced me to clarify even what I'm trying to do with Bitcoin. And so that's kind of been what's driving my just tweets recently and just thoughts recently. And I think that's how we got connected. So yeah, I'm just thankful to talk it out anytime that I'm able to.
Yeah, I mean, since our last conversation, I've been following you more on Twitter, and it's something I hadn't really thought about before, and we're obviously going to get into it, but you're very much about spending Bitcoin, using Bitcoin, not just hodling Bitcoin. To be honest with you, when we first spoke, I was much more on the side of, well, just hold it, and, there are good reasons to do it. But after speaking to you and seeing what you're writing about, I am starting to think we've got to be careful, and we've got to make sure that we do use these tools. They're very, very useful, and this circular economy could be so powerful. So I'm glad someone is standing up and sort of is a little bit of a contrarian view in the Bitcoin community, and I'm glad that you're actually bringing it to everyone's attention.
Yeah, and it didn't start from any sort of like, oh, I want to piss a bunch of people off today, or like, oh, what's the like most bombastic anti what everybody else is saying thing that I can come up with. Like, no, this really happened to me live, and I'm talking and tweeting about it live in this terms of like, I was the same way. But I first bought Bitcoin in 2015. And I've just been buying a little bit the whole time just because it's, a fun thing to do on the internet and a fun way to save money. And then you get all the politics and everything involved with it that, I enjoy also, which is like the world is changing. No doubt the world is changing. And so just buying Bitcoin by itself is already such a massive, like you're already such a massive contrarian if you're buying Bitcoin that like, I think that's why everyone is so passionate about different things in their own way, because it already just pre-selects for people that have strong opinions and are willing to go against the narrative of the entire world. And so that's what I want to say in and of itself is that like preaching, oh, everybody has to start spending Bitcoin, everyone's doing it wrong. Like Bitcoin doesn't have a problem. Like Bitcoin works. Bitcoin works great, and it's working every single day for lots of different people. And so just what I've experienced recently is trying to figure out, how much commerce am I doing though on the legacy system rails? And is it possible to do it on Bitcoin? Because so rather than just taking everyone else's word for it, that like, oh, it's too hard to buy groceries with Bitcoin, or like it doesn't make mathematical sense to buy groceries with Bitcoin. I I honestly just like was just decided to, why not just try it? Why not just try it? And just see, like, check the math for myself. And that's where I've been trying to figure out the incentive of like, does it work to replace and spend, and do I feel any different? And the answer is like, I feel great. Like the answer is I've learned more about Bitcoin and learned more about how to use Bitcoin in the last 90 days than I have, since first getting into it in 2015.
So talk me through, like, last 90 days, you've decided, right, I'm going to really get my hands dirty. I'm going to use this technology. What have you found? Is there anything that's surprised you? Anything that you didn't see coming, or that you found more useful than you maybe thought you would have? Or, what's the experience been like for you?
Yeah, honestly, the thing that was the most useful and most different for me was like downloading Samurai Wallet. And I've talked about this a little bit before, that like I thought Samurai Wallet was for other Bitcoiners. I thought Samurai Wallet was for other Bitcoiners that were better at being private than I was, and it was this complicated, thing. And like I'm an iPhone guy. I'm an iPhone guy. I like use Cash App. I use like every mainstream thing you could in the US, so like I'm not a cypherpunk. I'm not a privacy maximalist. I'm not any of that. And so that's why I thought Samurai wasn't right for me. But thankfully, through our meetup, I was able to meet some guys that were willing to, kind of talk me through it and make me realize that, you don't have to give up your iPhone. Like, go and buy. Like, and so I did this. I went and bought a used Pixel, Google Pixel 3 off Craigslist, and I wiped it down to factory data, and I just loaded Samurai on it, like from the Android packet file right from their website. So I never signed into the Google Play Store. And like that feels awesome to now I only have one device in the whole world that's not doxxed. Like, and it's my black like Pixel 3 with Samurai Wallet on it. And so that's cool to be able to like, and that's what I tell other people is, don't stop anything you're doing. Everything all the apps you've already tried with Bitcoin, all the on-ramps you've already tried, keep doing all that. Like there's too much. When we hear advice from other Bitcoiners that are maybe more mature in their journey and more have tried out more wallets and stuff, we don't stop to ask them what their goals are for the apps that they're using. And so we immediately think, oh, the way that I'm using Bitcoin is wrong. I have to do it the way they do it. But then, you run into problems where like, I'm an iPhone guy and I buy from the mainstream exchanges in the US. Like that's completely different than someone who like runs Samurai Wallet and buys off of BISC. So like, you don't have to switch up your whole stack. Like it's okay to have multiple stacks, and it's okay to go experiment with different on-ramps and different wallets in other ways. And the easiest way that I found to do that was with a separate device. And another reason why the Samurai Wallet was so different for me was because like now that they have mobile mixing on the phone, the mixing and like CoinJoin is no longer confusing to me. Because I always saw like if you're using CoinJoin and you deposit the clean UTXO and the change UTXO to the same hardware wallet, you're undoing a lot of the privacy that you just paid for through the CoinJoin. And so I always heard that, but again, so it sounded too complicated. Like I don't have great UTXO control. Like I'm not that great at that. But Samurai Wallet, for the first time, it lets you label each UTXO and it lets you have mobile mixing. And then there's just the unmixed side of your wallet and the mixed side of your wallet. And I just, send it through there and I spend out of the mixed side now. And so in that sense, I achieved like digital cash for the first time. Like, and so I wrote this post for my website where I put, the Pixel right next to $100 bill. And I just said, like, I finally did a, cash transaction, as close to a cash transaction over the internet as I've had before. And so that's been the light bulb that has really driven this last little journey for me.
The flow for you would be buying from an exchange, sending it onto Samurai, doing the mobile mixing for any spending. So anything that's going out is always being mixed, and that's just obviously helping with your privacy and anonymity. That's
Yep.
basically the flow
Except,
for you.
yeah, exactly. Except the funds that I use with my Samurai wallet, I buy all peer to peer here in Orange County. So
Okay,
I
good.
haven't.
All right.
That's and that's where my different flow is. Like if I'm going to buy on Cash App, then I'm just going to send it to my normal multi-sig that I use. But if I'm going to buy it peer to peer, through just people that I know in the county, then I'm going to use it the same way I would use $100 bill in my wallet, but just inside Samurai.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of keeping things separate in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, you can have your KYC stash, you can have your cash stash, like you were talking about before, these different buckets.
The record at these exchanges doesn't go away. Like it doesn't matter it doesn't matter what implementation of CoinJoin you use. The record at these exchanges does not go away. And so that's like if you're looking to, try to do this and try to set up a Samurai wallet with just, peer-to-peer Bitcoin, just keep doing whatever you're doing on the other side. Keep doing whatever you're doing with your other, stored for the long-term funds, and just practice getting involved in peer-to-peer, and practice mixing.
I think it scares a lot of people off. Before speaking to you last time, I basically never would spend my Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not something I'd ever do because I was like, oh, well, I have to buy it. And then if I'm buying it on BISC, then it's normally 8 to 10% more
Yep.
money. So then if I spend it, I was just like, there's no real need. But I think that the idea of this circular economy, I mean, certainly I always wanted to accept Bitcoin for my art and on the website, and for any work I'm doing, I want to be accepting Bitcoin. But the more I think about it, if we do have enough of us who are exchanging, then it doesn't really matter because we're working in sats, not converting to pounds anyway. So it doesn't really matter as long as you're dealing with other Bitcoiners. So it's about growing that group of people.
And it's about pulling in commerce that you're already doing anyways. Like it sounds, if someone doesn't listen closely, it sounds Keynesian. I'm like, oh, spending's great, spending's good. That's the revolution. We have to just all run around and no, like us, like me buying stickers and just like doing random stuff is not like that's great. Like buy stickers as a test transaction to learn how to do it, and that's great. I don't think that's bad. But what I'm more interested in is trying to figure out. Like just today, okay, I needed the USB cable. Could I go to Amazon and buy the USB cable? Yes, I could. But could I go to minefarmbuy.com, which is I'm pretty sure it's minefarmbuy.com, this, Bitcoiner that you see around on Twitter, and he sells computer cables and mining equipment and whatever. Or, and so it's like, and maybe the difference is, I go spend $12 on Amazon, but if I can spend $15, with him. And so, yeah, there's absolutely a trade-off, and there's absolutely fees, and there's absolutely you're gonna overpay. You're going to overpay spot when you're buying Bitcoin on BISC, and you're going to spend a little bit more, most likely, when you're spending with these Bitcoin companies. So you're right. You have to factor that in. And it kind of is, I think it reaches this point, why there's such a split right now between kind of OG Bitcoiners, and then there's a split between kind of the 2011, 2013 crew, and then kind of the 15, 17, 20 crew. And I think it all has to do with how much you're in. If you're this can happen at anybody's net worth. But once you get to this point where your fiat stack and your Bitcoin stack are just kind of neutral, they're just kind of both equal, that for your day-to-day life, your every new dollar that comes in or every new pound that comes in, you kind of know what your percentage is that you send to Bitcoin and your percentage that you keep in, fiat. And number one, I think that needs to be talked about more. And that's why I like the idea of Bitcoin budgeting. The whole concept of, how much do you keep in fiat and how much do you keep in Bitcoin? I don't think that's talked about enough. I want to hear other people's tips on how they manage that, because then once you know from a savings perspective how much you keep in fiat and how much you keep in Bitcoin, then you can go on the other side and look from a spending perspective. Okay, if I spend $2,000 a month on all these different categories of things, where can I just find $100 worth of that stuff to move over into the Bitcoin economy? And then I spend $1,900 in like, USD and $100 in Bitcoin. And then just try that for a few months and see if you really are getting eaten up by fees. Like, yeah, if that's causing your savings sat stack to go down so drastically, absolutely don't do that. Absolutely don't do that. But like, start to look at it like we're all really good at thinking internally about our savings perspective. All I want to do is I want us to think about our spending in the same way. What percentage do I do in the legacy system, and is it possible to do some percentage of this in the new system?
It's an interesting idea, and it kind of like, I guess to probably a lot of people outside of Bitcoin, they're like, yeah, well, obviously you're going to spend it. Like if you're kind of going to use it as money, then obviously you're going to spend it. So I think what would be nice is to see. I mean, you were saying before, like, oh, you might buy a cable and it will cost a little bit more if you're doing it with Bitcoin. I can't see why it can't go the other way. So, like, for example, I would happily take a 10% cut on the cost of any of my artwork to accept Bitcoin. Like, I'd allow people to pay me 10, probably even 15% less than I would accept in fiat.
Yep.
Because I want the Bitcoin, and I also like the idea of getting to a point where I don't really have to deal with banks anymore. That would be the ideal. If you can earn it, and then everyone else that you're dealing with, you can spend it with, then it would be much nicer. It gets us much quicker to this world that we all talk about of like, oh, well, fuck the system. We don't trust the banks. We don't trust what's going on. We want to cut them out. Well, maybe we can do it a bit quicker.
Totally. I think you're right. I think there will be a lot of cases where it's a discount for Bitcoin. I think that works best it'll take specifically with this example this morning, the part that was more expensive was the shipping cost. Like so the cost of the cable was actually the same. The cost of the cable was the same, but the shipping cost, dealing with independent online retailers, shipping is going to be higher than dealing with kind of the big box store retailers. But like, all we have to do is get a little bit of volume going so that the merchants can dial in their systems better. And, maybe it's, hit $35 and get free shipping or whatever. Like, there's tons of cool stuff you can do with e-commerce. So, but like for me, doing that first one helps me to then like think about it better. And I can like, it's the same way as sending Bitcoin transactions. Like when you're first sending Bitcoin transactions, I used to set high fees. Like I used to just let the fee estimator do it for me because I was nervous about it getting there. Right. But now I'm comfortable enough to dial it all the way back to one sat because I know that it'll show up. And so it's kind of the same thing with some of these e-commerce things, is that like the first or locally, like you won't be able to figure out like your exact pricing for what the market is for, your art in Bitcoin if you don't, sell a few. And so, and maybe you won't be able to maximize it exactly right. But whoever's taking the other side of that deal for you locally is still like, it's still a cool experience that's happening. But I absolutely think you're right. Like I think lots of people will end up offering discounts to get people moving into Bitcoin.
And the issues that we're talking about there with the shipping costs, that's for physical goods. As we move more and more into this digital world, a lot of the services that we're going to be using, a lot of, for example, if I want someone to do some editing for my podcast, well, I can pay them in Bitcoin.
Yep.
And I'd rather pay a Bitcoiner to do it because I'd rather support something that I believe in. So I think it's almost like we need some kind of directory or somewhere that people can find by category what it is they want, and then see, well, is there a Bitcoiner offering these services? I don't know whether that's possible. Well, obviously it's possible, but it needs someone much more technical than me to do it. But something like that would be pretty cool.
Totally agree. Just putting out feelers for different kinds of directories, and there's some out there in different formats, but I agree. There's no one universal search for, how do I get involved, in the economy. And so that's, I think that's definitely something that even just in the past few weeks, I feel like the more that I've seen other people talking about this. So I think the mind share is shifting in the positive direction. We will start to see those directories. And then what happens? Then the directories drive competition, which will like, get the pricing dialed in to where it's more comfortable. And that's cool.
Yeah, that's proper free market stuff then.
Something about, and then when you were talking about paying other people for editing and stuff, so something cool that happened to me this week too was this guy a friend of mine came over and worked on my house. And he's working on my house as a friend and helping me figure out how to fix things. But then I was like, dude, hey, like I appreciate your time today, and so I paid him like $50 a Bitcoin. And this was his first, so that's the first Bitcoin he's ever had. So like that's crazy that inside 2020, this guy who just got introduced to the economy, the first Bitcoin he ever got was Bitcoin that he earned. And that's really powerful. Like so he's starting off this whole thing in a completely new place than I did in 2015 and a lot of people did. And so I think that's cool. And I think that is going to happen faster than we think. And so then him asking, okay, well, where do I spend it? Or what do I do with it now? And I say, you for sure want to hold on to it. Like, I'm not immediately preaching that he should, walk over to this website and buy like dumb stuff with it. Like, no, like that's his first $50 of Bitcoin. Like he needs to like hodl that and stick with that and like do more work to earn more and add to it from his fiat position also. And so that's a net positive transaction for him, because now a higher percentage of his savings is now in Bitcoin instead of it being all in fiat. It's a higher transaction for the Bitcoin economy because I would have paid him $50 in cash anyway. So instead of that cash just staying in the legacy system, it moved into the Bitcoin system and is now sitting in the Bitcoin system. And so I think commerce can actually raise the economy. It can raise the net flow into Bitcoin.
Well, it helps with fees and all that kind of stuff as well. We do need there to be activity on the chain. And then the other thing that I saw, you'd paid someone with an open dime, when I was scrolling through. How have you found that experience?
Yeah, so open dimes are another one of these things, just like Samurai Wallet, that I was nervous to try because I didn't want to spend the money on the USB, on the open dime. I wanted to, stack sats with it. And so thankfully, like a friend of mine, and so I'll address that. Like, that's not weird. Like, if you feel like that, that's not weird. I felt like that. And I think it just takes time. It takes time to where your fiat stack and your Bitcoin stack just become in equilibrium, based on whatever your financial situation is. And that can happen at a high amount or it can happen at a low amount. You get to this point where you're already like buying more to hodl it is positive, but I'm looking for more freedom. Like, I need more freedom in the right now. And so that's what caused me to start searching around. But so yeah, like my buddy and I were just like out at a local bar, and like we both had open dimes. Like he had one on his necklace and I had one on my keychain, and like so we were just sitting with him like on the bar talking about him. And then all these other just like like boomers, just their eyes lit up when we started talking about Bitcoin. Started talking about like that, and they were able to like physically hold and touch open dimes. And so it like one guy wanted to buy it from us on the spot, but he didn't have enough cash, and so we like did this whole thing where he covered our beers and we sent him Bitcoin to his new wallet that he had. And then so I ended up just giving the open dime to my buddy too, because he covered me, and I just said, I'll get another one. So, and again, so did the whole transaction make complete economic sense all the way down to the penny? Like, oh yeah, this is like no problem. Everybody should start doing this right now. No, like, is it clunky? Like, is it whatever? Yeah. But I mean, that's me and my buddy just having fun out at a bar, like onboarding people in real time. And so I kind of want to I want to get back to that, like where it's like this. I don't want Bitcoin to just be this side quiet thing that I do where I'm just like squirreling money away into it, hoping for the number to go up. Like that's not, dude, that's stocks. Like I already do, like people already do that in the US with stocks. Like Bitcoin is not a stock. Like Bitcoin is cool. Like if Bitcoin was just a stock, then like I don't think we would all be like sitting around here like talking about it. And so I'm trying to like break out and like think more.
A lot of what we do isn't efficient. Like you say, Bitcoin is fun, it's different, it should be exciting. Like it is a revolution, and it shouldn't be hiding in the shadows and all of that kind of stuff. And it isn't efficient. My time spent on Bitcoin is the least efficient thing I've ever done in my life. By far. Like, doing this podcast and spending the amount of time that we spend to learn all this stuff and learn how to use all the technology and all this stuff.
Well,
like you'd be much better off working in almost any other job, but it's
totally
exciting and fun. So
Well, and so far, right? Like
Yeah.
so far, there hasn't been like we can't quantify this like giant return on investment for like me and you like sitting here today talking about this and anyone spending their time like listening to it. Like
Mm.
so far, it looks like this other random hobby that like people do, but the number go up is going to go up on that also, like the speed at which you're ahead of like understanding this and the speed at which you can explain to others and like give people freedom in their lives. Like think about the original people that like ever taught you about Bitcoin and like and
Mm.
how where you hold them in life. You are that for so many other people, and like that's where the return on investment is gonna come from. And
Yeah.
but I love how you said you're right. Like it doesn't make economic sense in reality right now. It doesn't make economic sense. And that's why the whole like learning the earn and spend side of the Bitcoin economy is so important, because it's like, I don't want to go back to a desk job in the legacy system. I don't want to.
Oh.
That is a trap. And this isn't even just general, bashing 9 to 5 or whatever. I don't mind 9 to 5. I enjoy working in offices. I enjoy working with other people, and I don't hate that aspect of it. And it doesn't bother me that I have friends and family that are, in that world. What bothers me is how rigged the legacy system is. And so like I want that stability of being able to go to a desk job just in the Bitcoin economy. And so if that means that I have to, clunkify around and try to figure out how to buy stuff on the internet with it, that's fine. Like that's an investment in like this economy that I want to work in. I want to go to a desk job for Bitcoin. I don't want to, just go back to the legacy system. Like that's why I'm here. And so in that sense, like that's why I'm passionate about it, is because it's not because, oh look, this is so cool, it's a hobby. Like no, the legacy system is dying and it's trapping people. I don't want to go back to that. I want to go to the future.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's the future, and it feels like doing this kind of stuff is going to accelerate it. Spending it, using it is going to accelerate it. And also, it's not just that, like you said, going back to a 9 to 5, it's not the fact that you're doing work behind a desk. It's that you almost feel like you're helping a system that is designed to ruin people's lives and enrich a very, very small proportion of people who know what they're doing. And
Yeah,
by participating in it, you're part of the problem. And that's how I feel now, is like, I, I just don't want to be involved. It just feels dirty to me now, because now when I understand really what's happening, I just think, oh, we can't be part of this. We have to have something better, and there is something better, so we have to make it happen,
absolutely.
because no one else is going to.
Right. If not us, then who? And that's why like the $3 that I may have overpaid because I ordered a cable from this website is
Mm,
pennies compared to the amount of middlemen that have ripped me off in my life for my labor.
mm,
Like that's what it comes down to. And it's like when everyone just wants to, and that's the mind shift that I'm trying to get everybody to make, is that like, look, you think that you're overpaying or that Bitcoin is clunky to spend or whatever. That's nothing compared to the amount that the legacy system is ripping you off. There's so many different middlemen between your job and the grocery store that you go to or the new phone that you buy, that you're like, you're right. Bitcoin is a deal. Like it's a deal. It's saving you time. It's saving you labor. And so, and it just gets better every time you do it. So you're right. I think we're over quantifying, like we're over quantifying the little sats fees that we pay in Bitcoin when we're under quantifying how bad the legacy system rips people off.
mm. It's horrific. It's one of those things. I always felt something was wrong, and I always had this feeling. I was just like, it doesn't, nothing adds up, and everything seems like it's getting harder for people, and people are working harder, and things are more difficult, and people are more stressed, and I never trusted what the politicians were saying, or any of the stuff that you see on the news, and when you really dig deep enough, you're just like, oh, it's all just designed to just fuck people over. And like,
Mhm.
I do, that's really like the main reason. I mean, obviously the Bitcoin technology is amazing, and it's revolutionary, and having sound money is great, but the fact that people can now just exit the people that can just go, I'm just going to use this other system. It seems fairer. Like, we know where we stand. It may not be quite as efficient sometimes in certain areas, but like, it's not supporting this terrible system that everyone's feeding into. I think people, especially like now, I don't know what's happening really, what you're seeing over there. I know there's like rioting and protests and, lockdowns, and everyone seems to be at their wits' end. So it seems like it's perfect timing for this new system to be here.
Right. Yeah, I exactly agree with all of that, and that's why I think normies, like I think regular people are closer to Bitcoin than we give them credit for. I think you're right. I think everyone knows that the system's rigged. Everyone's frustrated. Like even this guy that I met this week that bought our beers and we sent him Bitcoin. Just like you could see it and you could hear him. Like he used the word like crushed. He was like, I feel crushed. Like it just doesn't work. Like it doesn't work and it's not fair. And you can talk to millions of people that feel the exact same way. And so that, dude, I just been reminding myself of that is that Bitcoin is so completely different. It's just a complete different paradigm. And so if you're stuck and thinking about it just like a stock, like just move it around a little bit and think about the portfolio of your life. Think about the portfolio of where you go every day, what you do for the money that comes in, how much money you have to send out in order to, have your standard of living, and look for ways to cut costs so that you can get more into the Bitcoin economy. And then also look for necessities that aren't bad. Paying for a house isn't bad. Buying groceries isn't bad. Buying a new phone isn't bad. None of that's bad. Being a consumer of things is not bad. Being an over consumer of things, is where you can get into trouble. But Bitcoin is a separate economy. Earn, save, spend in Bitcoin, and look at the percentage that you do in the legacy world, and look for ways to do it in the new world. And as people start to do that, then, and this is what we need from our Bitcoin influencers. Like, look, I believe Bitcoin is a community. I know people talk about the nuances of like what that means, or no, it's all individuals that use Bitcoin in different ways, or like, oh, it's a section of like other communities. Like, I'm kind of going to drop all that nuance and stop hedging, and I'm going to say Bitcoin is a community. Like, Bitcoin is a network. Bitcoin is an economy. An economy is a community. Okay. And so with that mindset, just look at total, like, I don't want to look at, like the market cap number anymore. Like, I want to look at the like GDP, like what's the GDP? What's the global product being created in the legacy system, which the numbers are rigged in the legacy system. And then what's the GDP inside the like Bitcoin economy? Like, let's get new stats, new words, new ways of, thinking about this. Like, I don't think I like, we shouldn't ask these podcasts. We shouldn't ask people how they got into Bitcoin anymore. We should ask them, how do you use Bitcoin? Like, what stack do you use? What wallet do you use? What node do you use, and why? And then, how do you earn Bitcoin? Or if someone's like, I just save it right now. I have never touched it. I don't spend it. That's awesome. That's not a bad answer. I'm not going to stand here and say that that's a bad answer. I'm not going to bash like saving it because numbers going to go up and the legacy system is dying. I agree. I do the same thing. So my follow-up question though to that is, okay, how do you decide how much to spend? How do you decide how much to save? How do you decide how much to keep in your national currency and how much to keep in Bitcoin? Because I want to hear about that. Like, I want to hear about that. And I want to say like, okay, so that's how much you decide. And then when would those numbers change? And so, or like, what signal are you waiting for in order to say like, oh, we've arrived, now it's time to start leaning into the economy? Because if your signal is some fiat level price, I would say, okay, well then what's your goal? Is your goal to sell back out then, realize fiat gains, and do something in the legacy system? Because in that sense, like, I'm not sure, like, that's fine. Like, that's fine. Like, you deserve to, improve your standard of living because of, having early information to like this new paradigm. But I would challenge you to like think bigger. Like, if that's your end game, I would challenge you to think bigger.
That's treating it like a stock, isn't it? That is literally just treating it as an investment, and when can I cash out? And I think you're right that the ideal is that you don't have to cash out. You would just use it where the value in it will have more purchasing power, but you don't need to buy Bitcoin to hold Bitcoin to then resell it for dollars to then buy something. You don't need to do that in an ideal world. There's just one extra middle step that just doesn't need to be there. Yeah, I'm all for it, and I think that it's interesting you were saying about someone at the bar who was older generation and they saw the open dime and that got them interested. Having something physical, like something tangible for some people, is something that's going to get them involved. And if that's what we need to get more people involved, if they are of that older generation, it's all well and good just saying, oh yeah, fuck the boomers, let them get on with it, they've ruined everything, blah blah blah. But actually no, most of them are struggling, and if they could understand this stuff and like use it in a more simple way, I think they would. There's so many people who just, if they could just grasp how big this is and how useful this is and what it achieves by defunding a lot of the shit that's going on at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think that just people be running for the exits. It's just trying to get that message across.
Yeah, I agree. And I think on that specifically, like, I think open dimes and mobile wallets are like phone wallets are easier to use like than hardware wallets. Like I personally don't recommend hardware wallets unless they're inside a multi-sig. Like I would not use a hardware wallet as a single key just because I don't see how that's helpful or useful. So like I'm all about like open dimes and mobile phone wallets. And I think like I would love to see boomers. I'd love to see any generation like buying open dimes and just keeping them like lottery tickets. Like just keep a stack of them in your house. Like so many people already gamble on so many other things. Like buy this and keep it in your safe next to the gold. Just do it. It's like and so I think seeing young people out in life, like doing Bitcoin live is it was just so funny. Like watching, it's all about relationships. And so just doing it out live and being willing to talk to people about it, I think is fun.
I'm still yet to use an open dime. What's your thoughts with like you send some sats to one, then I don't know, you got it on your key ring and you've had too many drinks at the bar and you drop your keys in the beer and then it ruins the device. As far as I understand, there's no way to back that up, and I may be wrong, but as far as I understand, you would then just lose what is in there. It's like cash. That's gone. Is that
Yep.
correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's
so you do small amounts basically, and just accept that, like, all right, I'm not going to put more than $50 on here or $100 on here, and like the worst case scenario that happens, and it'd be annoying, but it's not my whole stash.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. And I would go for even I think those are the exact right amounts to like it's enough to like matter and like think about it, but it's not so much that you're going to be super crushed if something happens to it. And then if you run into people that like want to know about Bitcoin, then you have the opportunity to sell them the Bitcoin right there on the spot, and then you buy another open dime and do it again. Like that's why I kind of enjoy having one on me, because it's just like it's just fun to like give them away.
Yeah, because people like that. Like they like the physical side of it. Because you're like, okay, you're going to buy Bitcoin, and they see a number on a screen.
Mhm.
I know that's basically what our normal current system is, but people do like that physical thing, and they look cool as well. Like those open dime things look awesome. Like they look proper, like futuristic, like different. People are just like, oh wow, what's that? And it just makes it more exciting.
Right. Well, and then and it starts to think about like, and then it becomes a fashion thing. It becomes like the way you wear gold or the way you wear diamonds. Like there's and it's a political thing. Like there's no blood on this money. Like you can take it in any direction you want.
Mm. Yeah, that's true. And you were saying earlier about with every podcast, and you are absolutely right. Every podcast, we sort of tend to ask how people got involved rather than so much about what they're doing and how they're using it. But I have to say, I found it interesting because I came across your website when I listened to you and Marty chatting on the Tales from the Crypt podcast, and I was like, wow, this guy's come from political sort of background, and that's not something that I'm really used to hearing. It seems to be more people who are like very like anti-state and very a certain type of person. That's what I was like, wow, this is someone who probably understands this system, the current system, much, much better than I would, and has rejected it. So without going too much into, you don't have to go too much into it, but like, what was there like a breaking point where you just went, shit, like this just doesn't work, or what happened?
Yeah, no, I can tell you exactly what it was. So, like, yeah, I've always been to politics. I was the student body president in my high school. I was on student government in my college. And after I left college, I went to work for a bank, and I got hired away from the bank to work for this supervisor campaign. And so, supervisor, like county supervisor, sometimes they're called county commissioners in other states. It's just kind of like it's like right above city council at the county level. So I did that, and I've worked on campaigns in Orange County for 6 years. And I was really lucky, and I got named the Southern California field director for the Trump campaign. So I actually worked for the Donald Trump campaign. I helped throw 2 rallies. I was a part of the crew that threw his Costa Mesa rally and a part of his crew that threw the Anaheim rally. So work on that, and then that night in November like shocks everybody, crazy, like he wins. And then what happens in politics after that is then everybody starts fighting for the positions. Like everyone wants to be a part of the administration, and it's all about what job you can get and what title you can get, right? And so people that are on the campaign are normally in good position to get a spot. And so I fill out my application, and I, talk to, everybody that I'm able to get the favors and get the introductions that I can get in order to, go to Washington, D.C. and work with the administration. And there was this video production job inside Health and Human Services that I was like absolutely qualified for. And I absolutely had the, campaign experience to do. And I had shown that I was, loyal to the campaign, and I wanted to, make America great again. And want to know what happened? I got through 70-80% of the onboarding. I did multiple interviews. They looked at all my investments. They just did all this vetting. And my application gets to the White House personnel office, and my application gets denied based on my social media to work for the campaign or to work for the administration. And that's when I realized it. So it was that, in combination with everything we've watched happen so far, that I have no doubt that Trump wanted to go to Washington, D.C. and shake up the system. And in a lot of ways, you can argue both ways. Oh, he hasn't shook up anything, or oh, he's done a great job shaking things up. You honestly, either of those is fine. I kind of understand. What I realized was that the bureaucrats are in power. The 30, 40-year-old bureaucrats that have just worked in Washington, D.C. for 30 years and 40 years, they're in power. They can stop change makers from going to DC. I have a beard. I have, I am just a unique person or whatever. And they don't want me there sitting in those cubes with those bureaucrats. They denied the application of change makers to go to DC and shake up DC. And so in that sense, that's when I realized that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who we elect. It doesn't matter if we elect Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders. The people, the bureaucrats, the thousands of government employees, they run the show. So you can't drain the swamp. You can't drain the swamp, because the swamp fights back, and the swamp keeps out change makers. So that's it's that, in combination with just learning more about Bitcoin, that I realized you can't vote in the change that you want to see. It won't work. When we say the establishment protects its own and the institutions protect its own, that's become just such a buzzword talking point, but that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
I hope everyone understands what I mean. When I say bureaucrats, the government employees, not the they aren't bad in and of themselves. Each human is just there trying to do what they think is right for the country. But when you get thousands of them all stacked up in little political, like ranks, and they all like feed off each other and do that whole thing, they don't let new people in, and they don't let new ideas in. And so they just keep writing and writing and writing more rules and more rules and more rules and more rules, and the country never gets any better.
Yeah,
And
well,
so
it's just more and more it's just more and more regulation. It's the same here, but the more regulation they make, the more of a job security they have because there's more to do. But it doesn't ever seem to make anything better. It either stops innovation and competition, and the big boys, the big companies, and the banks, they just want the regulation because they can afford to deal with it, and anyone who's smaller can't. And it makes it more difficult for just the everyday person. Like, there's so many stupid rules. I mean, I worked within our healthcare system 7-8 years. It was an absolute nightmare because every single meeting we would have, it'd be like, oh, we've got this great idea, we want you to fill in this extra form to tell us how many different mop heads and mop buckets you have, and are they color coded, and then can you put logs of every time that the mop is taken in and taken out of the cupboard, and then can you put that into a spreadsheet and you're like, we can't even look after patients anymore because all we're doing is useless paperwork that doesn't help anybody. And it's just, I think you're right. It's like that the whole way through the system.
Yeah.
Just bullshit.
Yeah. No, it's frustrating. And that's why, and it's like, okay, so then what happens? Like, people on the other side who are pro regulations will say, well, we need it, to keep people safe. You just want to, defund all this stuff. And the reason is because, speaking United States specifically, the Republicans and Democrats are on the same team. Like, the Republicans repeal stuff that they say is going to help everybody, but then it doesn't end up helping everybody. And I'm sorry to say that and have to jump on that wagon of the people that say that, but that's true. Both parties have gotten so many swings at just fully changing things up, and no one has ever fully changed anything up. The only thing they can all agree on is to spend more money, print more money, spend more money. Yeah. That's it. You go and look at the votes. Look at the actual votes. They don't agree on anything except print more money, spend more money. That is crazy, because then the richest counties in the United States are all suburbs of Washington, D.C. They stole money from the rest of the country. They are stealing money from the heartland because the money, they print more money, pass it to the friends, print more money, pass it to the friends, charge more taxes, to the rest of the states. And so dude, you're right. The whole thing is so frustrating. And the whole thing is such just a loggerheads, because each party will just say, vote for me and we'll fix it. Vote for me and we'll fix it. Vote for me and we'll fix it. And I'm like, that doesn't work. Everyone's been lied to on that so many times and never seen any change. That is not a thing anymore. Bitcoin is a thing. Bitcoin is a thing that actively every day is growing and eating up mind share of people and giving people freedom in their own lives. And in the same way that Uber just launched. They just launched. They didn't care about the taxi unions. They didn't care about the rules. They didn't care about anything. They just launched, and they were like, we're going to put this app in everybody's hands, and we're going to give everybody a way to get rides everywhere, always. And then you just watch it grow and grow organically. That's how Bitcoin is. Bitcoin doesn't, we're going to write the rules now. I love the way that Max Kaiser, there's this classic clip where he's talking. You know how excited he gets.
I love Max Kaiser.
Flips the chair over. He's like, we make the rules now. Bitcoiners make the rules now. That's exactly it. I'm done. I'm on strike from the legacy system. My company, my time, my labor, is only available for cash and Bitcoin. That's it. I'm done. And the more of us that do that, we will grow this other economy. Can they stop individuals? And will some people get stopped? And will some people get bogged down? And will some people get bad ends of the deals? Yeah, they will. Because there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees that this whole thing is going to work out super smiley and we're going to take over the federal bank and all this stuff. No, there's no guarantees. But I refuse to live in a system. I refuse to live in the system. I don't want to work and be stolen from anymore.
Yeah, it's actually immoral to continue when you know what you know, I think. To say I'm going to continue to work in this system and allow it to continue when, you know, we have to pass this world on to a future generation, and like it's getting worse and worse, and when we know we have an option to potentially make it better, it may not work, but it can potentially, and I think it will make it better. To ignore that is really wrong.
I agree with that.
It would be crazy.
I agree with that. And I agree with that so much that like the other thing I've been trying to think about is like Bitcoin has to work for families. It has to work for families, and it has to work for couples, and it has to work for everyone. It can't just half work for some people. Bitcoin cannot just be a thing for unbanked nomads. It has to be a thing for like real families in real like first world countries. Like it has to be, because that's the way you create freedom. Like that's the way you create freedom for everybody, and that's the way you create this opt out economy. Like it can't. Because too many couples are stuck in this paradigm of where one person is into Bitcoin, one person isn't, and it's this constant argument about how much you put in and how much you keep out. Like, and that's what's making it feel like a stock. That's what's making it feel like it's this 401k that like the money only goes in one way, and then you never feel any benefit from it, because like that whole thing is just such a joke anyways too. Like they force you to lock up your money until you're 65, and that's how you get the tax benefits. Like that whole thing is a joke too. Like those laws are built to keep you trapped. Like there's no way to build tax protected wealth in this country that you can access, like in your younger years. It's impossible. You're not
It's
on capital
literally a Ponzi scheme.
Huh?
It's literally a Ponzi scheme.
Yes. No, it physically literally is. And Social Security will not pay out the generations that are paying into it right now.
Well, they can't. Of course not.
No. That is not working. And too many people, again, I'm kind of like riding that line of like if this is how you use Bitcoin, this isn't bad. It's not bad in and of itself. I just want you to dream bigger. Just dream bigger, because like you can get more freedom for your family right now. Like you don't, and the world is just getting more and more complex, more and more complex. And so say Bitcoin does take off to some crazy 6-figure price, like then you're going to try to talk to your partner about it. Like how much more complicated is that conversation going to be then than talking about it right now? You have to have the conversation today. You have to incorporate it into your family financial planning today. Bitcoin is not happening in the future. Bitcoin is happening right now. Like and so that like it can't, like if the partners aren't on the same page, it's going to drive apart more families than it drives together. And I want Bitcoin to drive families together. I want Bitcoin to create freedom so that people don't have to work such long hours getting ripped off, so that they can have more time with their family, like authentically, like not in this dumb Western world, work-life balance stuff that we talk about. No, for real. Like not having that mental weight of your like job on your head all the time, so that you can physically and mentally be present for your family. That is what Bitcoin can do, and we have to get it there. It has to get to that point.
Yeah, because we only get one life. We can spend so much time at work and worrying about money so that we can support our families, that we actually neglect them. That isn't, I think, like you're saying, that isn't how it should be. We should be able to spend time with our families. We should be able to not just send kids off to school and not spend any time with them, and not spend any time with your partners. And that doesn't feel right. And like you say, Bitcoin can allow families to be closer. But yeah, I think you're right. It can drive people apart, because I think you said your wife's also now into Bitcoin as well. Did you find it difficult at the start, or you both got involved at the same time? How did that work?
Yeah, I mean, so I bought in early 2015, and like she bought towards the end of 2015. We've both been, slowly doing it off and on together since then. I listen to the majority of all the podcasts. Like I do, I do all the podcasting and learning, and meetups and things. And but she's been a really awesome sport at going to the meetups with me, which has been like really cool, and like it's opened up good conversations for us to have. And I think like really it comes back to kind of full circle where we started at the beginning of, as soon as I started treating Bitcoin more like money instead of a stock, it
Hmm.
started being something that we could do together better. And so, in the same way that we talk about, what should we do with our checking account, and what part of the house should, we do next, and, what should we spend money on next? Like, that's when I started trying to figure out, like, okay, is there a way that I can do these same things on Bitcoin the same way we would have been doing on our credit cards and our checking account? And that's been the thing that has forced me to try to find these sites and, figure out how to use Samurai Wallet and figure out how to, do different things. Was how can I have my savings account and my checking account on Bitcoin too, so that if I do end up earning any Bitcoin, I can, we can use that for our house.
Yeah, and the idea of earning it rather than, you said earlier, sometimes one of the people in the relationship will be like, oh, all you're doing is just buying Bitcoin, and then you're telling me you've got a hodl for at least 10 years, and they do just see it as it's a one-way thing. It's just taking money off the table that would be spent somewhere else to go into just a savings account that would never be spent. And I think that's maybe quite difficult for people to wrap their head around. Whereas if it was like, okay, as a couple together, we're going to find a way of earning a certain amount of Bitcoin every month, like what can we do as a side hustle, or how can we think about this in a different way that actually could bring people together rather than sort of drive this divide between people, which I could definitely see happening. I mean, I'm lucky enough that my partner, she's on the same page. Again, not like a loser like me that spends my entire life learning about this stuff and listening to podcasts and reading articles, but she gets it. She thinks it's great. But I think for some people, if one person's really into it and really cares and the other just has no time for it, it will cause arguments. I'm sure that happens quite a lot, and that would be a real shame.
Totally. And because I think it's like a lot of populist movements, like the Trump campaign, pulled families apart. Like I would assume, Brexit like pulled families apart.
Yeah.
There's the protesting, in Iran, like pulls families apart. The yellow vests in France, like pulls families apart. Like, because you have some people that like are everyone is fed up at a different level. Like, everyone has a different fed up line. And so that's constantly what we're arguing about, is like, why isn't your fed up line, where my fed up line is. And
Yeah, yeah. That's an interesting way to say it. I've never heard it like that. My fed up line.
yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
so and a lot of people, buying Bitcoin is their release valve for that, for being fed up. And then for other people, still in the legacy system, going out and going to protests, and everything is, where their line is. And then other people, they try to stay rational and try to say, maybe we can just vote, and this person will help us this time. All of that is a different expression of the same thing. None of that is bad. Like, voting is not bad, protesting is not bad, buying Bitcoin is not bad. All those things are positive. Like, do more of all those things. More voting, more protesting, more Bitcoin. Like, less, like less banks, less regulations, less like the elites like controlling everything. Meet people where you're at. Meet your family, where they're at, and find where their line is, so that you can use their language and protest with them in their language, because that's how the elites are winning. Like, the elites are winning because we're divided. And I know that's such a cheesy thing. Like, I know everyone has heard that, like, oh, we have to stop being divided, like we're letting them win. Like, I'm not even in like a kumbaya, like thinking that, oh, all of Twitter is gonna like agree on things. No, like, back to your house. So we're talking about, okay, what percentage of your savings is in fiat? What percentage of your savings is in Bitcoin? What percentage of your spending is in fiat? What percentage of your spending is in Bitcoin? And then inside your house, like, don't stop arguing. Like, don't argue about what's happening outside your house. Like,
Yeah.
what percentage of the time are you and your partner talking about something that's happening inside your house or something that's happening outside of your house? Stop talking about things that are happening outside your house.
Yeah, it's so true. Things you can't control. Again, I'm really lucky because we don't do that in this house. It's just not something that happens. But the rest of my family and friends and people always arguing about, like you're saying, they're arguing about politics that they have no control over. They're arguing about protests that they have no control over. They're arguing about all sorts of little petty things that takes up all their attention and all their time, and causes divides. And it's pointless because it doesn't change anything. It frustrates me so much. I've seen in the last 6 months, very close friends and family really fall out over this kind of stuff. Like you're saying, over Brexit and this kind of thing. And it's like one has an extreme view of that it's good and one has an extreme view that it's bad. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. It's not going to actually affect their lives, but they think it does. And that's what's exciting about Bitcoin is like, well, every time you're buying sats and every time that you're not using the legacy system, you are actually doing something. You are actually taking your abilities or your skills or your work away from the old system and you are putting it into a new system that everyone knows the rules to.
Right. If Bitcoin's working and Bitcoin's working in people's lives and people are working and the system's working and you're using it, then we should start being able to see that Bitcoiners are actually more level-headed and more free-spirited and more like their day-to-day is light. Like their burden is light, their yoke is light. And their families should work better. Like when the shock of number go up wears off, like the reality of wow, their family really loves each other is like gonna set in because it just reset everything. It reset their relationships with like the people they work for. It reset their relationships with each other. It reset their relationship with politicians. It reset their relationships with everybody outside their house. And so when Bitcoin's working, like your house should be a better machine than other houses.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, are there any other tips that you would share with listeners? Anything else that you've learned, sort of like you say, in the last 90 days, really getting your hands dirty with this stuff? Is there anything that you would say, if you say to someone who right now either doesn't own any Bitcoin or owns it but only hodls it, that's all they do and all they've ever thought of doing, what would be your top thing to say? Right, try this.
Yeah. So I would say, so if you own a little Bitcoin, but you've only thought about it as hodling, I would take out a sheet of paper and I would just ask yourself, these questions like, what are my goals? What are my goals? And then I would say, what percentage of your savings is in your national currency? What percentage of your savings is in Bitcoin? And then just write both of those numbers and then say, what amount do you spend on average per month in your, national currency? Like, and then look for things like, and dial that up by, groceries, gas, cell phone bill, any of those things. And then for those Bitcoin savings, where do you hold it? Like, think about the apps that you use and think about why you use those apps. And like, so me, like my stack is like, so I use Casa multisig for my savings and I use Samurai Wallet for my like earning and spending. Like, and so that's what I've simplified it down to. Like, I think those are the two apps that work the best for me. Like, I don't want to mess with hardware wallets just on themselves. And so I would like, that's what I do. But like whatever stack of like apps you use, that like that's awesome. And so, but if you feel stuck, sometimes switching up the apps you use is something that you can do. But don't switch up anything just because I'm saying it. Like if you like what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing. Then I would encourage you to if you haven't tried Samurai Wallet, I would get a dedicated Android phone. Don't even get service on it. Just get a dedicated Android phone. Only use it on Wi-Fi and just get Samurai Wallet to try it. Like try the mobile mixing. And if you don't have a local meetup that you go to, I would try to find a local meetup. Try to find other Bitcoiners that you can talk about this live with, not over Twitter, like live. Meet other Bitcoiners live in real life, and then buy $20, buy $50, buy $100 on your Samurai Wallet from another live person. Like, and if you don't have that, then try Bisq. But Bisq is tough. Like Bisq is a paradigm shift, and so if you have a dedicated machine at your house, try downloading Bisq and keep your offer online. Like make an offer and just keep it online and just treat it like eBay or treat it like Craigslist or treat it like anything. Like just put up your like how much you want to buy and what price you would pay and just keep it online because that's how you make the market. That's how you make the market. And so try that.
I love
and
Bisq. And it's not that difficult. It's a little bit intimidating when you first sort of download it, and it looks a little bit. It doesn't look that user friendly, but once you've used it once or twice, it's actually really not that hard at all.
Yep, that's awesome, right? And I think where people do get in like that's why I encourage, like, don't change up what you're already doing. Like, if you already have your storage mechanism and your exchange options that you like, don't even think about it as like, oh, I'm replacing this, or oh, I'm doing this all over, or whatever. Like, just think about it as a separate segment, like a completely
Mm.
separate stack. Like, that's what has helped me like get into experimenting better. And so when you think about it like that, and you think about like what can you do peer to peer, like where you live, then like that starts to help, change it up a little bit.
Mm.
And then I would say, like, don't just go online and buy a random hat or a random stickers. Like, then go back to your sheet where you wrote down, how much you spend per month on different things, and try to figure out, like, is there a way where I can like physically buy, one meal this week, with this like cash stack that I would have just spent cash at this merchant anyways. Like try, and that's where it's like, so you're not doing anything different than you already were. Like, find a place where you already, eat dinner or get food from, that you already
Mm.
would have paid cash for, and find a way to just do it on Bitcoin. And I think just through those exercises, like, you'll open up like a lot of the same things that like I've experienced, and you'll be at a cool, like, then from there you'll be able to think about any number of different things.
You learn as well, right? Because you're
Mhm.
actually using this stuff, and it's just sharpening your skills. It's
Yeah.
I think, like you say, even if it's slightly less efficient, it costs you slightly more. Well, you're learning, so that that is worth something. Learning is worth something.
Because I know this sounds drastic, but like, you don't want to be caught in a situation where your bank does get turned off, and this is the first time you've ever been spending or like sending Bitcoin. Like,
Hmm.
so even think about it that from a security perspective, like you're almost, you're completing the whole loop. Like, if you're sitting on a stack that like you feel uncomfortable every time you touch it or move it, like, that's not good for a security perspective either. Like, you don't have peace of mind. Like, you want to have peace of mind. Like, you don't want to be nervous, because the world is getting more and more crazy, and so you want to be comfortable in this new paradigm. So like, we're going to look back, and this is going to be a relatively calm period compared to like where the world is going. And so that's why you want to practice, Bitcoin now, not in the future when you're, forced to do it in a censorship resistant way.
Yeah, 100%. It was interesting you were saying as well about these meetups. It's one thing here that I'm sure there are some. I mean, I go to the BitDevs meetups before all the lockdowns and all that kind of stuff, and just listen in. And the people there are great to chat to. There's a few of us now who are sort of on Telegram groups, British Bitcoiners who are trying to like work out a time where we can all get together. But I think that is the absolute ideal, because I'm assume you learn a lot there, and you get to meet some sort of like-minded people, and you can trade if someone does want
Mhm.
to buy or sell. What's the experience been like for you going to these meetups?
Dude, it's everything. Like, I've been going to the Orange County Bitcoin Network for like 1 year now, and we started with 7 people, and we've had hundreds like come so far. And so we've been thankful to have like cool speakers and stuff like that. But no, it's everything. Like, and that's another reason why I've gotten more passionate about like circular economy, is because like, you're right, going to the devs ones is so cool and so interesting to like listen to them talk, and like that's all like awesome. But something that like non-tech people can sit around and talk about, like, is the circular economy. Like, you can talk about that with people, like, as a sign, as a form of protest. Like, how do we build the circular economy in our town? Like, literally write down, like, where can I get food, shelter, lodging, and a haircut, like, in my town?
Mm.
And figure it out. Figure it out. Like, that becomes the hobby. Like, the hobby is no longer, let me buy this thing like a stock and like a scratch ticket. Like, it's now, how do we build this other economy? Because, all the XYZ like political and like sovereign like reasons.
Mm.
That becomes the new thing. And that gets you out in the community talking to real people.
Yeah, that's very cool. And have you found that there are people there who, I assume you sort of have people from all different backgrounds. So you might have, like you're saying, like a barber, or somebody who has a restaurant, or someone who's a plumber. And have you found that there are people who are willing to trade their time for Bitcoin within that community, and that people are actually doing it?
Yeah, I have. And it's not a lot. It's not a lot. I can't sit here and just like give like all these like giant numbers, or like say it's like this like giant thing that's like absolutely happening, but it's closer, it's more available than I thought it was. It's more available than I thought it was. And what's funny is that the two, like I've paid my buddy who like repaired my house, and I like am getting food delivered, tonight from like a local like chef here. And what's funny is that both those guys are relatively new to Bitcoin. It was easier for those guys to understand like, oh yeah, let me take a risk on like accepting this other currency, like than it was for like getting some long time meetuppers to like start to kind of like understand what we were trying to do. And so that in that sense, it's funny. So the new people, we don't have to take new people through this crazy long onboarding thing. Just get the money. Just get them the money. Just get them the money. And then just answer the questions. Like we don't have to like everyone already knows what money is, and everybody already knows that the system's messed up. What else do you need to know? Like I've listened to 1,000 hours of Bitcoin podcasts about how the money's messed up and the system's messed up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
we know it's.
I don't need that. Yeah. My buddy doesn't need that for 1,000 hours. They know. They already know. Mm-hmm. And so just tell them that Bitcoin's different. And like, here, let me legitimately buy something that I need from you because I need food.
Once they've got that money in their hand as well, they're more likely to ask questions and look into things. I found that as soon as I bought Bitcoin, I was like, right, I own this thing now. I better start to understand it. And it takes you down the rabbit hole as soon as you've got some in your hand. Even if it's, like you're saying, your friend who's got £50 of $50 worth of Bitcoin for coming and doing some work on your house, he's probably more likely to ask you questions and look into things than he would be if you were just talking to him and he had none.
Totally. Absolutely. And like now that we're talking about it, it's no longer theory. Like we're not talking about theory of like, oh, what if Bitcoin does this in the future? No, Bitcoin is doing this right now. Like I just paid you in a currency that governments can't control right now. That's powerful. And so it's not, because that's the thing is like, I'm done. And people argue about like, oh, Bitcoin doesn't need marketing or like whatever. Like that's fine. That's fine. You're right. It doesn't need you to argue with other people that are cynics on the internet. You're right. Like arguing with cynics doesn't get you anywhere. However, that doesn't mean that every person that hasn't thought about it is anti your thing. Like there are more people in the world that want to get Bitcoin than don't want to get Bitcoin. There are more open-minded, regular people walking around every single day than there are absolute cynics that will tell you to, that it's stupid. Like, I completely believe that. But so when you talk to them, though, like, just talk to them like a normal person and like find out what motivates them. And because like Bitcoin fixes this, I can match. You can put me in a room with any single person, and I'll match the Bitcoin incentive that fits what they need in their life.
And so it's amazing that, isn't it? That is a weird. Obviously comes down to just like corrupted money corrupts everything, and therefore it's going to fuck someone over in some way. But it is crazy how true that Bitcoin fixes this is, and how you can, like you say, there's never a time where you're like can't match it to what someone actually needs, and that is crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Like in that sense, we almost like reduced it to a meme too fast. Because when we reduce it to the meme, we pull out just how this is a crazy new paradigm. The world is different. Like the legacy system is doesn't run the game anymore. Like there's a new game in town, and the new game is more fair, and it's for everybody. And so I don't think Bitcoin is not just for unbanked nomads. Bitcoin is not just for random dudes that listen to podcasts. Like Bitcoin is for everyone. And as soon as I started just walking outside my house and like thinking about it a little bit, just twisting it a little bit differently. And then, so from a time perspective, think about how many hours you spend listening to Bitcoin podcasts and listening to people talk about theory, and think about how much time you use actually, like sending a transaction or receiving a transaction, or, looking online for places to, build the circular economy in your own life, or like you said, a side hustle. Like side hustles for Bitcoin absolutely is something that will like turn the light on and make it different. Like make a market in your town, whether that means just having Bisq open on your computer with the thing open. Awesome. Whether that means learning the way BTC Pay Server works and like putting something for sale on your website. Awesome. Whether that means, learning for the first time how to tip out someone else's BTC Pay tip jar, do it. Like the 1,000 sats is worth it. It's worth it. It's
Mm.
worth it. Like, and
Yeah,
so build a market in your town.
it's a nice. I think you're right. Again, like you can spend. I've almost got to that point now where I have spent the same, just like thousands and thousands and thousands of hours learning about it, and it has got to the point now where I'm enjoying more getting my hands dirty. Like literally, why I was running late for today was putting graphene OS on this phone. That's
Mhm.
taken me. Honestly, I've been messing around with that for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and pissing about and trying to get Linux on an old laptop, and then I had problems with that, and now I've managed to do it on the Mac. But now I've done it, and I'm like, yes, I've actually achieved something here. And then, the next step is BTC Pay server, and you have
Mhm.
these little projects, and it is more rewarding than learning and going deeper about a subject that I already know a fair amount about, because it does kind of come to a point where you're like, all right, I get this. Like, this is awesome. It is better money. The money we do have is terrible. The system we have is terrible, and it's exciting to go down that rabbit hole, but it does come a point where it's like maybe time can be spent better, actually using this technology and playing with it, and it is rewarding.
Exactly. And look what's so cool. Like if you become the guy in your town that gets to the point where you can run BTC Pay server, then you can become the merchant processor for any other merchant that you onboard then. And then anyone else in the meetup, like we do this. So Steven from Orange County like started the meetup. He's way better at BTC Pay server and running nodes and running servers and all that stuff than I am, okay? So he's
Hmm.
that guy, like for our county. But now, as I'm out networking and talking to bar owners and talking to people like about Bitcoin, now we have a turnkey solution. We're ready. We're ready. We have a turnkey solution for if and when the bar decides, hey, like why you guys are already paying out each other peer to peer in Bitcoin, just start paying the bar then for the beer. Like
Yeah.
that's a great day. Like that's a great day, and that day will come because that day is now within our reach, and we have the resources to like implement that now in the
Mm.
county now, and we don't have to wait for that in the future anymore. So now it all just becomes a traditional business development game and a traditional spread the message game.
Yeah, that's really cool. I might have to reach out to this guy if he understands it so well, because it takes me such a long time getting to grips with these things. I always get there eventually, but I definitely want BTC Pay to get my hands dirty and to get that on my website. So I don't know. Maybe it's a case. I'm thinking I'd like to do maybe a couple of videos and things. I'm going to do one with this graphene thing now, because
Yep.
it was Matt Odell did a brilliant video, but it was for Linux, and
Yep.
then a few people had jumped in on Twitter and given me some advice on how to do it with a Mac, but like I'm not techie. I'm an idiot
Hmm.
compared to these
Hmm.
people who just like they live breathe this stuff. And it's
Hmm.
taken me honestly like 5-6 weeks to finally fix it. And I sat up all night and last night and all day today, just so frustrated. So I'm like, nah, I think I should now make a video for other idiots like me, so that they can just sit and go, right, I'll do this in an hour rather than like
Yep.
100.
Dude, you have to. You have to. The world is demanding it. Like the future is demanding it. Like not to get too serious, but it is. Like it
Yeah.
is. Those 100 hours are not lost. Like those 100 hours that you climbed over are not lost. Like if you think about collectively how many hours like Matt's guide has like saved other people, and then how many
Oh yeah.
hours your guide will save other people. Like we're pulling the future and we're pulling freedom like towards us. And what I did, like I wrote a little thing up just about how, look, if you don't know how to flash a new phone and like Matt's video and Max's video is too much, then learn how to just not sign into the Google Play Store and just download
Mm.
the APK straight from the website. Like even that is pulling back the freedom in the direction that we need it to go to. Having a
Mm.
dedicated phone not signed into Google that you just run the APK on, which is just the Android file, like that's already awesome also. And then you can get going.
Yeah. So for anyone who hasn't already gone on your website, brianharrington.org, it's got some really great content on there. I'm impressed with how much you've got on. It's sort of looking through it this morning. I was like, oh, do you know what? I need to pull my finger out, because it is, like you're saying, it's really helping people actually use this stuff. And your videos are awesome. So I'm going to try and
Yeah,
take a leaf out of your book and do the same and really try and push this thing forward.
I love it. I love it.
Like I say, I'm firstly so sorry that I wasted your time the first time, and I know you said it wasn't a waste, and I actually do agree. I think this has been a better interview the second time, but I apologise anyway. And I'd like to say, for anyone who hasn't gone on the website, do it now. It's really, really good, and thank you for changing my perspective on things, because I'm starting to really see that we can push things forward quicker. And as good as it is chatting about monetary policy and all this kind of stuff, it's almost getting to that point where it's a little bit like politics. We can talk it and talk it and talk it, but
Mm-hmm.
until we do it, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't change.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's great that you're thinking like this.
Totally, dude. Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity. It's been fun, hanging out and talking with you, and I'm glad that we're connected.
Awesome. And yeah, when I start messing around with this video, when I get going with it, I'll send you a copy. And if you ever want to do something in the future, or collaborate on something, give me a shout, because it seems like the best way to onboard new people.
Do it. And anybody listening, as you do go out and do circular economy stuff like in your life, like tweet me and tell me. Like it's brain like in your head, Harrington, across Twitter and Instagram. Yeah, tag me. And yeah, appreciate if you go to brianharrington.org and watch the videos that I've got up on YouTube. Yeah, hopefully it sparks some different thoughts in your life. But yeah, build the economy. Build the economy and grow the Bitcoin economy.
Perfect. All right, Brian. Well, thanks again. And yeah, everyone go check out the website, and I'm sure we'll speak again soon.
For sure.
Great chatting with you.
Cheers.